Greetings, Neuse Little Pod listeners. This is your host, Matt Gore, reminding you to please like, follow, subscribe, and share the podcast on your available podcast apps such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and any other podcast app you can think of. Share our episodes on Facebook and let us know what you think with a comment or review. Now, please enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to Neuse Little Podcast, an audio program discussing the almost 50-year history of Neuse Little Theatre and the backstage antics and stories that come along with running a community theater in a small town. I'm your host, Matt Gore, and we are coming to you from NLT's stage and base of operations, the little log cabin located on the banks of the Neuse River in Smithfield, North Carolina. We lovingly refer to it as the Hut. Hello, Neuse Little Podcast listeners. This evening we have a very special guest for you. Things are opening back up in our part of the world, and while we reach the end of our week and a half of spring we have in North Carolina and ahead into the summer months, we are looking to explore outside content here on Neuse Little Podcast. Basically a glimpse into the theater world outside our little hut. Different perspectives are always important. Tonight we have a guest for you. He is well known throughout the Triangle for directing, acting, and was president of the board of directors at Raleigh Little Theatre for 2 years. He was kind enough to make the trek from Cary to join us here at the Hut. And I'm happy to introduce Mike McGee to the show. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Matt. Hey, everybody out there. Super happy to be here.
Well, thank you for coming, Mike. I sure do appreciate it. Now, in the spirit of outside perspectives and all that, I want to start with what you're doing now. I know we were discussing before about how things are just now opening up, and a lot of boards are discussing what their first show back will be, and I'm wondering what's next for you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. I've kind of been in my longest theater hiatus ever, and really super excited to get back. I wasn't really into doing Zoom theater and things like that, so I've kind of really just been a fan and a viewer. But I've been meeting with RLT. I've directed Cinderella the last 2 years with a gap in between now, and we're hoping to get Cinderella back up in December. So I actually was just at Raleigh Little Theatre this week talking to Patrick Torres and Heather Strickland about what our plans are, and it's looking optimistic. I don't want to make any announcements for them, but it's looking more optimistic that we'll have the opportunity to get Cinderella back on stage this year.
Well, that's excellent news. That's a favorite of mine, especially my fiance's, and a lot of people around the area. And you said, let's dive right in. Let's talk about it. You say you directed it for 2 years with the COVID gap.
Yep.
What was that like for you? I know it's a very iconic show for the area. It's a very lucrative show for that theater. And what was it like being the conductor on that train?
Yeah, it was my first. I had directed before, but it was my first musical and my first really huge show like that. And I had the benefit. I stage managed the show for about 5 years when Haskell Fitzsimmons was the longtime director, as well as my daughter was in it for a couple of years. So it was kind of a family affair for a number of years. So I knew the show real well. But then when Haskell passed, Rod and Nancy Rich took it over and made a lot of changes to the show and the structure of the show. And so yeah, it was overwhelming at times to have 30 people in a cast, and then when there's crew there during shows, it's up to 60 people, so it's just a massive production. But I surrounded myself with a great music director and choreographer and stage manager, and so they really helped me get through it. But it was super fun. It is a lot of pressure, right? It's a very popular show. People have expectations of what they saw in the past, even though we change it a little bit every year. I'm lucky that Rod and Nancy took the post-Haskell years, because that had to be a ton of pressure for them to step in for somebody that had directed it 25, 26 years and then had to take it over. So I didn't have that burden, but yeah, it's still. I mean, we have a family that I think has come every year but one, so 35 out of 36 years, and I know them pretty well from my stage manager days, and so I'm always like looking for their opinion of someone who's seen the show so much. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love multi-generational shows like that. I have kids in the cast as young as 8 or 9, and then up to close to 80 on the high end of the cast. So it's really fun to work with a big multi-generational cast. It brings a lot of energy, and yeah, it's super fun. And I love watching the show and listening. I don't come to every show because I think we do like 25 or something like that, but I do sneak in quite often and just sit in the back and love to listen to the laughter and the enjoyment. It's a real family event. But yeah, so I think the second year was a little easier, although the second year you're now trying to top yourself, which makes it interesting. And but yeah, it's really just a different experience. I'm used to directing, smaller, more adult-oriented shows, so it was a big change for me, but I really do enjoy it.
Yeah, I like how you touched on there the idea of outdoing yourself. Do you feel like even no matter what the show, there's some type of pressure to always do that, or is it always kind of the same approach?
No, I don't. I mean, I'm a competitive person, so I always want to do well and do better than I probably did the last time. I think with Cinderella, because we add topical humor. So I've only done it for 2 years, so it hasn't been like a long drawn out thing. But the second year, well, the first year and then the second year, it's coming up with some new topical jokes.
Right.
When we don't delve heavily into political humor, but the topic of the day, a few things here and there will get written in. I added the dab to the show, which is a huge hit. I usually get the teens to do some current dance moves that don't necessarily fit into the show. So those kind of things stress me out a little bit. Like I usually just because I think I distanced myself from the show because of COVID and didn't want to get my hopes up, I haven't thought about it much. But like when I got asked to direct the show, it was a year before, so there was one more Rod and Nancy year in between. So I started already thinking about a year ahead what I wanted to do, and then the second year, once we closed the first show, I started thinking about what I wanted to do the second year. So I think it's just a lot of like, what do I come up with? What's going to be funny? What do I change? And this year I think there'll be a lot of COVID jokes that write themselves, but
right.
but it is coming up with some fresh stuff. I guess that's the word, fresh. You want to make it fresh where you can. You want to preserve the really legacy stuff that people love, like the sneeze polka. For those who've seen the show, it's just something I don't think we'd ever change. Although this year again, there's jokes in there that are going to write themselves.
Yeah. But, people be scared to death. Like, oh god.
Yeah. We've been joking about rewriting it and having the cast wear masks during that scene and all that stuff. But we'll see what I come up with and the team comes up with. So yeah. So it's just that wanting to find some fresh moments, and I wouldn't consider myself a writer, so just coming up with those bits and ideas and working them through. It's fun, but stressful also.
Right. And by the end of a rehearsal and the show's about to go up, those bits like in your mind might be wearing thin, but because you've seen them so many times, that type of idea. So let's kind of tie it into Neuse Little Theatre.
Sure.
You said you've been in how many shows here at NLT, sir?
I have been in 3 shows. I was in Dyer Van Frank, which was actually my first real show on stage ever. I started out on backstage stuff in various theaters, so that was my first. Tony Pender cast me, and we had a really great show. And then I did Death of a Salesman, which Randy Jordan directed, and that was a really difficult role.
Yeah, I do want to come back to Death of a Salesman, because that's I believe that's one of your performances, Willie Loman. I've seen one of the best lead performances I've ever seen here. And but at the same time, a very difficult play emotionally, and also a difficult play to sell too in this day and age. But Dyer Van Frank, working with Tony Pender, what was your experiences on that? Because we've had Tony on the show, and we have a pretty good handle on his methods. And you said that was your first show on stage?
Yeah, I think I had done some little bit stuff, like maybe some stage readings or some little minor stuff. But like first real show where I auditioned and had a role. Maybe I had some stuff in grammar school that I forget. But yeah, first real role in community theater. Yeah, it was great. I hadn't known Tony before. I know he's been around the community a lot and throughout the Triangle for many years, but I hadn't met him before. And he's just such a positive force, right? It's just so much energy he brings to the show. Yes. So just encouraging. I've always throughout my career, whatever it is, my hobby here, I take little things for people. And I think one of the things I do, which I just thinking about now that I never really thought of, Tony, I'm sure you remember this, never sits in the same place. Like he's always moving throughout the theater, watching the different perspectives, climbing up the seats to see what it looks like from there. And I do that quite often, and I never really probably put 2 and 2 together, but I'm always moving throughout the theater to see how it looks from different places in the audience, and just different, how does it sound? sound? How does it look? And so I think I probably took that from Tony now that I think about it. But yeah, he was so, encouraging. I was so overwhelmed and nervous and unsure, but it was a great cast to work with. It was really a very, I think there was a few newbies as well as a few veterans like Brian.
Randy Jordan was in there.
Randy Jordan was in there.
Spencer Caprell. I don't remember the name of the girl who played Anne Frank. I'm sorry. Mita, if you think of it, let me know.
I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't think she did anything else with us.
She was great. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really. We think we sold out every single
Yeah,
show.
that was the first show when I was in the orbit here at Neuse Little Theatre that I remember doing extremely well.
Yeah, we even did some school shows. Tony cut down the show to an abbreviated version, and we did a couple school shows, and that was interesting because it's always stressful performing in front of teenagers who may or may not want to be in the room that their teachers drag them to. But yeah, it was just a great experience. It was such a positive experience. I felt comfortable here. The second the second you walk in for auditions, it's just such a neat and unique space that you really don't see anywhere else. The hut being the hut, and then just having the opportunity, and then just feeling so comfortable. Everybody was so welcoming. I'm sure that's where I first met Mita, and so I think it might even be the first place I met you loosely.
I think I was. I forget what I was doing. I was helping Steven out with I don't know what I was doing, but I came back for like a potluck dinner you guys were having.
Yeah, I do remember us kind of bumping into each other back then. So yeah, it was just such an amazing experience, and I can never thank Tony enough for taking. I think with acting, sometimes the hardest thing is getting your first chance, right? And so that I can never thank him enough for that. So.
Well, I can say Tony's always really good about taking a chance.
Yeah.
I like to think we all are, but Tony gave me my first shot too. So I have a soft spot in my heart for Tony.
Yeah, me as well. So all three of us have something in common.
Yeah,
we all got our first shot on stage because of Tony Pender.
That's amazing.
But it's always nice to hear that when you talk about how you felt like you were right at home right away. It's nice to hear that from other people because that's sort of how I felt. But we like to make sure people, when they come in, we try and make them feel welcome. Because sometimes you go places, you don't feel, because everybody knows everybody, and it's sort of cliquey a little bit, and they're not quite as welcoming. It's really nice to know when people come here, it comes across where we try and make sure people understand that, no, come on, we're happy to have you, kind of a thing.
There was a stretch there where all of our Canon nominees is our annual award show. There was a stretch there where almost all the lead nominees, except for one, were new people that year. So I think that's really important.
I felt welcome right from day one, and especially considering I was really an outsider even to the area, right? I don't live in Smithfield or even close to Smithfield. I'm actually in Raleigh, Matt, not Cary.
Oh, my bad.
I'm very offended by the fact that you might think.
Didn't you live in Cary at one point?
No.
Sorry. Oh, okay.
It's like another country. But just kidding, Cary friends. But so coming 45 minutes away, and and just not knowing anybody really. Well, I knew Randy Jordan. That's actually a lie. Randy and I knew each other a little bit from running into each other at places like Raleigh Little Theatre, but for the most part, didn't really know anybody. And yeah, it was just felt comfortable right from the first moment.
Mm-hmm. And so from that experience, a couple of years later, you kind of came back and took on one of the most iconic roles in the history of the stage, and that's Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman. And I remember Randy Jordan directed that show. Mm-hmm. This show is interesting because that's also the first show we ever used the turntable.
The rotator.
Yeah, the rotator, and that worked well. I remember you giving me the thumbs up every night, and then I almost fell every single night turning around the rotator because I would always forget at the last second when Steve would turn it.
Yes, so we have Randy Jordan, who directed that, to thank for the technology that is the rotator.
Yes.
So.
And we have used it since.
Oh, twice.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he worked hard on that. He did research and designed it.
Yeah, he wanted to do a rotator, and we had done turning platforms before, and they never work out. You always get a flat tire. You always, something goes wrong, something comes off. And we just had never had real good, consistent use of them. So I tried to talk him out of it, and he said, well, okay, well, what if we have sliding platforms? I was like, okay, let's revisit the turntable. And so he showed me something he'd found online, and I was like, so I tell people now, they're like, well, if we just figure out a rotating thing, I say, flip it over, make it a lazy Susan. Don't try and put the wheels so that the platform rolls. put the wheels upside down so you have a plate spinning. And they're like, oh, I said, brilliant. Never messes up. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it worked every night with like a charm. And that was,
With the cast on it and everything.
yeah, we all wrote it out for curtain call. So the entire cast was on it.
I had totally forgotten that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that was I'm probably revealing too much, but so I had just done The Odd Couple in Garner, and Randy had come to see me. I was Oscar, which was, I had a good year that year, and so I mean that was an intense role. It's a fun role. I mean it's just nonstop fun, but Oscar literally never leaves stage other than like 2 pages in the entire script, and really has a ton of. It's really a 2-person show with a few other people sprinkled in, and so I was really getting tired from that. And Randy kept asking me to come audition for Death of a Salesman, and I kept saying no. And not that I didn't want to do Death of a Salesman, but I had just finished The Odd Couple. My brain was hurting. I think auditions were like in between our weeks of shows or something like that. And I kept saying no. You guys were having a final audition, and there was an ice storm. I don't know if you guys remember that, but there was an ice storm.
Yeah,
and
we had really bad luck with weather.
For those auditions. And so I'm like, oh, phew. Missed the auditions, not going to happen, get it at him. Because, as an actor, of course, you always are trying to talk yourself in and out of things.
Yeah.
And then he pings me like the next day and says, I've added another day of auditions. And I was like, oh, Randy. And so I drove up on a Saturday, I think it was. And he gave me the part. I was probably a little young at the time. I'm now probably the right age because you kind of age from mid 40s to 50s at that point, up to 60s or whatever he does when he ends it. But it was a tough. My wife still says I was very miserable during the run of that show. It's a really tough emotional role.
Well, it's not a feel good show at all.
No,
so
it's not a feel good show.
And we had a hard time getting people to audition because, again, it's heavy, it's dark. I mean, basically, by the time the show's over, everybody in the audience wants to slit their wrist. It's not your happy feel good comedy. And so poor Randy, for his first time directing with us, was just panicking. It was very funny. So it was good that you showed up.
Yeah.
It was we had a lot of challenges during rehearsal, and right up till opening night, honestly. And then it all kind of came together. I think it came together final dress or preview, I guess we would call it. But yeah, we had both of the sons dropped out at various points. One like a week and a half before Tech Week. And some people were struggling with lines. So luckily, I mean, the show ended up better because we got Gus Allen and Jonathan King to step in and play my sons. And
2 great actors.
Yeah, amazing, and
definitely want to get Gus on the show eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the show, I honestly didn't think it was going to ever come together. I mean, I had my lines down, but we were just struggling, and it was a struggle to get those emotional moments because so many people were struggling. Obviously Gus and Jonathan came in late, so they got off book in like a week, so it was amazing. But it still hurts you as an actor who has to basically never leave the stage again. Your timing and get into those emotional places that Randy wanted me to get to, and it was just really, really hard. And then I remember it was pouring rain so hard on I think it was preview night where you couldn't even hear yourself talk, but the show just kind of finally came together that night, and it finally, as it often does at Tech Week, right? But it just finally felt like we had a show at that point, and I think it ended up being a pretty solid show.
Yeah, it was. Randy's direction. I remember one piece in particular that I do remember.
Oh, and Matt Gore was in that show. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. I forgot to mention that point.
I did play. I was in one scene as Willie's boss, and I fired his sorry ass.
We had a nice scuffle.
Yeah. Come on! I remember doing that New York voice, which I still don't know was a good choice or not. We'll see. And so I remember. Randy is a very passionate guy, and he's a very passionate director. And I remember one thing in particular he said that kind of stuck with me over the years, that writers like Miller and Tennessee Williams, they write these characters that are very, they don't exist anymore. There's no Blanche Dubois walking down the street anymore. If they are, they're very, very old. But Willy Loman, there are Willy Lomans all across the world. There are men who put too much identity into their work, or also it's a good toxic masculinity type of thing where it's just like it's all wrapped up in a work. And if I don't work my fingers to the bone, I'm not a man. That type of thing. And it's just, all that was handled, I think, very well by the actors, and on what could have been just bogged down by all this like drama. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's got its, I mean, it isn't a comedy, but it's got its lighter moments throughout the show, and then it smacks you right in the face right after that.
Right.
So yeah, but it was a great experience, and I'm glad I did it. Everyone, lots of people would die for that role, but I was tired after. I remember the first, I think it might have been, I don't know if it was that preview or opening night, but. We had, I think it was the preview because the show had finally come together. We had a really good run. Everything kind of finally came together. And I was just like weeping backstage after my end, which is not necessarily the end of the show, but I just got back there and was waiting for everybody for a curtain call while they did that little scenette at the end for my funeral. Spoiler alert.
What?
And I just started weeping because I was just like so emotionally drained. And so, there was so much stress and pressure and, so.
On our very last episode, Stephanie, when we had her on, said the exact same thing when she was playing in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Martha, and so she said the exact same thing. So, wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, moving on from Death of a Salesman. We have you in. We've actually discussed Putnam County fair bit on this show.
Okay, that's awesome. I hope it was all positive.
No, oh God, yeah, no, it is. We always talk about it in glowing terms. I always refer to it as my favorite show I've seen here as an audience member. There was just a special sort of magic on that show that just kind of I could tell everybody was working really hard, but also having a really good time.
That was, I can't thank Ruth enough for giving me that opportunity. I am not a singer or a dancer, and that role doesn't necessarily require singing or dancing, and that was always my dream role in a musical, to be able to not have to sing and dance. And so I've seen that show a number of times, always loved that role.
What role was that, just for the listeners?
I'm sorry, Vice Principal Panch, and who's kind of one of the moderators of the show, and quite a quirky character.
Yeah.
And so I got to a callback at Interact and didn't get cast, and came up here, and I had emailed Ruth ahead of time and said, Ruth, I don't sing. I'm not going to sing at auditions. And she said, okay, no worries. And so I get up here, and we're sitting here, and she's like, you haven't sung yet. I said, Ruth, remember that email? Nope, get up there and sing. I was like, Ruth, what are you doing to me? So I got up there and sang You and Me from, oh my gosh, Book of Mormon, and actually did pretty well, I think. I mean, it wasn't horrific. And so then I thought, I'm never getting this role. And so I was, sorry, this is a long-winded story, but I was having dinner with my friends about a week later. And we're sitting in a restaurant, and I guess I didn't hear my phone go off, so I'm like, oh yeah, I thought I had a pretty decent audition, but I'm not going to get cast. I didn't want to sing. They made me sing, and blah, blah, blah. Well, the whole time I had a voicemail from Ruth on my phone offering me the role, and so I got out of there, played the voicemail, and the rest was history. But yeah, that was just. It's such a unique role because he really controls the flow of the character controls the flow of the show. So I could pick which words. I mean, there's certainly a scripted portion that I couldn't change, but I had pretty much, Ruth gave me carte blanche to pretty much pick the words I want to, and you have to keep the audience in and then try to get them out at certain points. So it's actually a little bit of a stressful thing to be kind of making sure, because you don't want somebody to be ridiculous and spell certain words wrong that are gimme words, and then you don't want to necessarily clean out all the, because there's audience participation for those that haven't seen the show. Some of the spellers that get brought in are from the audience, and so you want to keep them in for long enough that they can be part of the bits, but then at times you have to get rid of them, and so it's very kind of, not complex, I mean, I don't want to make it like I'm doing brain surgery, but you still have to be paying attention the whole show. Throughout the show, I'm trying to decide, okay, what word's next, what word's gonna, and then, as I did the show more and more, I figured out what words were getting big laughs. So, I tried to rotate as much, but yeah, it just was such a cool role to have that freedom to kind of be like the host and moderator. And yeah, it was just so much fun. It was just such a great cast. And we had our challenges too. We had the hurricane hit in the middle of Tech Week, and one of our lovely actresses got flooded into her home and couldn't get here until like Thursday, until like preview, I think. Yeah. So.
And it's such an interesting show because you don't get a lot of improv musicals. And there are parts of it that are totally, you just got to go with what you get. But because of the audience part of it, it's a huge part of that. But yeah, you just sort of have to. I was always impressed every night with you guys because you never know exactly how people are going to respond when they go up to spell, because you're dealing with people who are never seen the show, maybe, and are not part of the cast. They don't know the script. They don't know what. My favorite night was apparently the girl who was the last audience member to get out. She, it's Smooligan, I think is the word, and she whatever she spelled, and you go, yes, that's right. And the look on her face was the pure elation of, oh my God, I can't believe I got that right, which of course she's supposed to get right.
Yeah, exactly. Little spoiler alert, no matter what she spells, it's going to be right. Unless it's like totally ridiculous. But
yeah, her reaction was just the best that night, because she just went, oh!
Yeah. And I got fooled by that. The first time I saw the show, I think it was at Memorial, formal Memorial, now, Duke Energy, Progress Energy, Duke Energy. And I got fooled by that totally. I was like, oh my God, they spelled it right. They're going to win. And then, no, they're not going to win.
Well,
it's not going to happen.
Well, spoiler alert on this one too. The trick is one of the actual cast member gets out before the last audience member gets out. Mm-hmm. So it does look like they've stuck around because they've been doing it correctly. So
yeah, absolutely.
The first time I ever watched it, I was like, oh, I can't believe they let him stay in the show.
I think you fool a lot of people. Yeah, I think you fool a lot of people. Yeah,
you're invested at that point.
Yeah.
Now, you say you don't sing, you don't dance, but there was a couple of, you did participate in like one or two songs, right?
Yeah, I did do some of the group singing, especially at the end for the like encore part, and we did a little Macarena and stuff like that, but nothing major. But yeah, I did do a little group singing. So yeah, the cast was really kind to me because I don't read music, and so I was trying to do my best. And some of it is like there was a couple of numbers which were really hard because I had to rhythmically give the words in the song at the right times. And a couple people in the cast were most of them, obviously all of them probably, were really strong musicians, so I think I frustrated them a little bit at times. And I literally made recordings so that I could practice in the car and try to get the timing right, because if I didn't get the timing right in the right rhythm, then it kind of messed everybody up. So that was probably the hardest part for me, and the part that I was most nerve-wracking. The group singing was fine because I could just kind of blend in, and that was fine. But that part was actually hard. And then it speeds up to be super fast at one point, and then trying to remember that you're doing the right words, because they're but they never actually spell the entire word because it's just a big, quick speed up thing. But just make sure you're doing the right words in the right order while they're trying to sing and go super fast.
Well, we had the luxury on that show you guys did of having a live orchestra, and they're also a heavy part of the show as well. And we don't actually get that for every. You want the live orchestra for every show, but you don't always get that. And we were lucky enough to have it. Was awesome. Was that the show you met Greg Hill?
I did meet Greg Hill on that show. Yes, I did. I had not met. I don't think I ever had even seen him, because I had been away for a couple of years at that point. So I don't think I had ever met him. I don't think he was around when I did.
Hanging with Daniel Radcliffe in London?
Yeah, I don't think he was around when I did Death of a Salesman. So yeah, I met Greg, and just such a great guy, and such a positive energy, and had super fun with him on the show. And yeah, and then I got to work with him later on. I think that's what you're alluding to.
Yeah. And then you cast him in Cinderella as the backup stepsister, the understudy, I should say.
Yeah, he actually shared the role. So I mean, Tim Cherry and Dennis Poole have been doing the role for 25 years now, and they're getting a little older, and so they were having some health problems here or there, and we do. I'm making up the number, but it's somewhere around 25 shows over a 2.5-week period. It's intense. 2 shows every weekend, and it's a 90-minute show with no intermission, and so we approached them with the idea of casting some other some understudies. And the first year, I cast a true understudy. He never got on stage. It was like the first year in 2 years where neither of them missed a show. And so I had this understudy, and he never got on. So then the next year, we kind of decided, it's not really fair to have someone work that hard and then never, this isn't Broadway.
Couldn't give him one show, one matinee.
I know. This isn't Broadway. They're not getting paid to sit backstage all night. So we decided that the only fair way to do it would be to give them some shows. And we didn't split it quite evenly. Tim and Dennis did a few more shows, but Greg, he did a good, I think it's actually about 20 shows. So he did a good, 8 out of the 20. So it was not quite an even split, but he did quite a number. And they were scheduled in advance. They were also obviously the backups for emergency, but their shows were scheduled in advance. We actually published on the website who was doing what shows, what night, so people could make choices if they were Tim and Dennis fans and couldn't live without seeing them again. And certainly Greg and Quentin was the other gentleman that played the other role, the other stepsister. And so so it was great. It was really that was a big role for him. It's definitely also one of those situations where you're sharing a role with people that have been doing it for 25 years and people are used to them doing the role. And I really kind of pushed both of them to really just make it their own. I didn't want them to be carbon copies. Obviously the words are the same, but I didn't want their characters to have to be the same as Tim and Dennis. So it was great to work with him and give him that opportunity. And he did amazing. I mean, he was just so good at it. And I loved it. I loved working with him.
Yeah, Greg's a good friend of mine, and the only reason we haven't had him on this show is because he is very serious about his COVID protocols and stuff like that because of family members, and we respect his wishes on that. But on the side, in his workshop, and he's also a very talented constructor and builder. He's building several of my props for Explorers Club. He's a madman when he comes to this stuff because he'll just work out in his shop and he goes like, "Hey, check it out! I made a safe door out of a kid pool," and it's just like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah." And he's making this rhino head for me, and he's just very talented. When his mind clicks in, like, I want to do that. It's amazing what he can come up with. He's a very multi-talented individual.
Yeah, absolutely. Such an amazing singer and just a super comedic actor.
Yes, he has excellent comedic timing. He has a background working on stage. He was like Six Flags, Jazzland. He's gonna kill me if I get this wrong because he takes this part of his career very seriously, where did Jazzland and Six Flags and how all the comic timing and stuff was honed during, a lot of it was honed during the time, and he's been doing it since he was a kid.
Yeah, I think wasn't he in the military chorus and things like that as well?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think so. I think we talked about that. But yeah, it was super fun to work with him, and it's always fun to get to work with people and he earned it. Like I'm not one of those people that just cast people because I know them. Because when you're auditioning 100 people, you're gonna know half of them anyway, and I can't cast them all anyway.
Right.
That's probably the hardest part of being a director is having to, not cast people and so he earned it. Yeah, absolutely.
Good. So transitioning into your actual directing style, I know we touched on it a little bit in Cinderella, but what's kind of your approach when you get a script? I know you said before you let it marinate in your head a little bit, but what's your general approach?
Yeah, I do, I'll read it a couple times and then I certainly block the whole show on paper before we start rehearsing, but it kind of takes me, I need to have a set to look at, not like the actual physical set, but a drawing or some concept in mind, and then I just kind of start thinking about the show at random times, and then slowly things will start to go into my head on what I want to do, and then I kind of sketch out general ideas. I'm not like a micromanager when I block a show, so I really just focus more on entrances and exits and general, like if I want a person sitting on the couch at that point or whatever, but to me, blocking is kind of really mundane, and so I kind of try to keep it to a minimum. I just like it's more traffic cop kind of stuff on paper. And then, I really like to just shape the show. Honestly, to me, you don't really start to shape a show until everybody gets the scripts out of their hands. So,
right.
So I just try to get through the actual, I've worked with different directors. Some will kind of block and shape at the same time. Some will, but I learned this from Beth over at Garner Town Players. She speed blocks, and I'm a speed blocker now too. I think I kind of picked up that style from her. So I just get the blocking done as quickly as possible.
Right.
You know, just here's where you're coming on, here's where you're coming off. Let's walk it once, and then we'll move on. And then once everybody has like kind of a good handle on that, then we'll start to, you know, so certainly you can't wait till everybody gets off script. So you do start to work it and walk it. But to me, the really hard work and better work happens, you know, once the cast, you know, starts to get more comfortable with the lines. But yeah, I like people to feel where they want to go. Like if you feel like you should be sitting right now, sit and let's see what happens. And I'll be honest, if I don't like it, I'll tell them I don't like it. But I'm totally, you know, I don't want it to be a free for all, but I'm totally, some of the best things, this really definitely happened in Cinderella. Like some of the best things that came out of that show, some of the funniest moments were me telling the cast to go, like a couple of the helpers, like the helpers are very physical comedic roles. I'd be like, hey, I want you to do something funny behind that window. Go work it out and let me see what it looks like. And they'd come up with stuff I never even could possibly think of. So to me, you know, it's a collaboration where you have kind of the final say. So I'm not shy to you know, I'll usually have a vision going in, but I just love to find what people feel comfortable with because you know, I think just things coming organically. You know, I stepped into a show once as an actor, and the person who had the role before me, like the whole blocking was him sitting. He just felt like he had to sit, and it was totally uncomfortable to me. And I was doing I stepped in a week before tech, and I'm, you know, doing the lines, sitting there, and the director's like, you look uncomfortable. And I'm like, I should be standing. It's like, do what you want to do. And so it was just so much more organic and felt so much more comfortable to me as an actor. And so, and I just have more fun that way. Like, I don't want to tell people like every little step to, you know, on this word, step over here.
Right.
You know, I did one show, The Curious Savage, which I know you all have done, and that's a big cast at times. There's a few moments when the entire cast is on stage, and I did it in a pretty small theater similar to this, maybe a smidge bigger, in Wake Forest, and so I had to at times be specific there, or else it would look like a hot mess. But for the most part, you know, I forget what it is, 10 people on a tiny stage, you have to be a little more specific, or else you know, you're bumping into. For the most part, yeah, I like to freeform and shape and work it, and just go with the flow. And you know, again, it's not a free for all. I have a structure and a vision in mind, but. I don't know. It's just more fun that way, and I think better stuff comes out of it. I don't know everything about theater. I didn't grow up in trained classical theater, and there's a lot of people that have better ideas than me, and I'm not. You know, I'm comfortable enough in myself that I can let them come up with stuff and be comfortable with it.
Well, it shows trust in your actors and your crew people behind the scenes, and I'm the same way. I don't like too rigid a blocking structure going in, because a lot of times you get up there and it doesn't work and you got to change it. So all that was for nothing. And I also think that's a very important skill for a director to have, is to be able to change it on the fly. If it doesn't work, change it, you know? And so, and also you said comfortable enough in your own skin to be able to take ideas from other people. I think that's very important as a director. And it's very important to be able to have another set of eyes and someone that you trust to focus on something that you hadn't thought about is very invaluable in theater. I think some directors sometimes get too rigid on, it's my vision, you know, that type of thing, which is important. Do not get me wrong. But like you said, organic is better than just rigid, kind of like here, and here, like a map. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love the collaboration part of theater. You know, I will usually have, you know, an assistant director or just even my stage manager. I mean, I am not shy to, you know, ask my stage manager if that looked all right. Does that look all right? Like, does it make sense? And you know, with Cinderella, I obviously have a huge team because that's a big show. So I have a choreographer, a music director, you know, the whole 9 yards. And you know, like I mean, they'll ask me if I like the choreography, but I'm not going to put my 2 cents there. You're being paid to choreograph the show. Like, go for it. I'll you know, they'll certainly ask me if I'm okay with this. But yeah, I think it's just more fun, and you know, like I said, it just opens you up to possibilities. So, and look, I've always, while I've been paid to direct, you know, I've only directed in community theater. So, you know, we're here to have fun. Like, we're here to put up a good show and do a great show, but like, people are coming from work and all these different places, and they want to have a good time. And you know, again, it's not a free for all. I've had some directors I've worked with where it seems like they haven't even looked at the script before the show started, and you know, it's almost like you're working it out, while you're sitting in rehearsal, and that's frustrating for an
Yeah,
actor too.
that is
There needs to be, it's kind of the balancing act of having enough structure, but also enough flexibility to move around and
Correct.
have some fun. So I'm kind of in between. I'm not at the high end of every little step is blocked, and I'm not at the low end of having no idea what we're doing
Right.
coming in. I'm a little bit too much of a control freak for that. I'm not super control freak, but I'm a little more control freak for that.
Right.
But yeah, and then obviously with Cinderella, it's such a big show, you have to be, a little more specific in something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're doing a 4-person show, well, I directed Sylvia a couple of years ago, and that's 4 people, so you can freeform a little bit more than trying to put up a music, a 30-person musical in a couple weeks kind of thing. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. It also sometimes the show. I mean, you have shows that need more structure, and you have shows that don't need more structure, and you have actors that it depends on your cast, depends on the show, and it's sort of you've got to be able as a director to sort of feel it, how it's gonna go. How much do I need to put my fingers in the pie to make it work? So.
yeah, no, definitely. I mean, when you're, and again, even Cinderella, I mean, there's a lot of collaboration stuff, but when you're, when you've got a scene with the entire cast on stage, 30 people, and even though RLT is a pretty big place, you still have to be a little specific about things. And then when you're working with kids, you have to be incredibly specific.
Yeah.
And it's always a interesting moment, especially during notes when I had one year where I was very frustrated. It was after a really tough rehearsal, and we just didn't get where I think we did a run through or something like that, and I was clearly very frustrated, and it takes a lot for me to get really worked up, and so I was giving notes, and one of the little kids raised their hand, and you knew it was going to be very not a question related to the show, and the cast member sitting behind them, you can't see this, but pushed their hand back down. I was like, that was smart. So I like to have fun, but I mean, I feel pretty proud of the work I've done as a director, and I think we've put up good shows. I don't feel like I've had a clunker. There's maybe some things I'd want to do a little differently, but
Right.
But I feel pretty proud about what we've accomplished in the shows that I've directed.
Well, before we wrap up here, what are some shows that you might want to direct or even act in one day? Usually when we talk to directors, they have a couple of shows rattling around the head, like, oh, I'd like to do that one day. What are some for you?
Yeah, so we talked about this a little before the show. I was supposed to direct Lobby Hero at Forest Moon in Wake Forest, and unfortunately the season got canceled because of COVID. We actually cast the show. It was one of those right kind of when COVID was just hitting and you didn't know what was going to happen, and we all had this delusion that it was going to last 2 weeks and then we were going to get right back to it. So we cast the show. We started online rehearsals, and then it just got further and further away, and we just didn't feel comfortable doing it remote, and so we scrapped it. And then now the direction has changed, not at Forest Moon so much, but with the town of Wake Forest, and that's a little edgier of a show, so I don't think I'll have the opportunity. I may have if Forest Moon does something somewhere else, but so anyway, I would like to direct Lobby Hero. I had seen it on Broadway and was super excited to direct it. I like darker, like for the most part, other than Cinderella, I like comedies or darker stuff or more topical and edgy stuff. I don't like to do. I'm not a huge classics person as a director. I like to do some new stuff that hasn't been done, over and over again. So I would like a shot at directing that. Most people aren't going to know this play. It's a play called The Ferryman, and it was written by Jez Butterworth, and it was first premiered in London. And it's I don't know that I'll ever find a place that would be willing to do it. It's a cast of it's set in Ireland in a very small during the IRA times in the 60s, and in a very small farmhouse. But it's like a cast of 20-something people, which is huge for a straight play, in this tiny farmhouse. There's animals in it. There's a baby, like a 6-month-old baby. So I don't think anyone's ever going to do it, but it was one of the most amazing plays I had ever seen. Paddy Constantine
yeah, I love him.
Was in it. He was one of the leads, and then Laura Donnelly, who's done Outlanders and now in The Nevers on HBO, was in it, and it was just such an amazing, intense show. And so I would love to direct that, but I don't know if anybody's going to give me a chance. As far as acting, I don't know. I don't know. I'm more of a comedy person. I like as a director, I don't love the classics, but as an actor, I've done a lot of Neil Simon. I think I've done 3 Neil Simons. I've done Odd Couple, Sunshine Boys, and California Suite. and they were all super fun. You know, I've done Harvey, so you know, for me, I just like lighter comedies as an actor outside of Death of a Salesman. So I don't know. I probably don't have like Spelling Bee was one of my dream. Like I always wanted to do that show. I had been chasing it for a number of years, so I got to do that. Luckily, I would like another shot at Odd Couple. I had such a great time playing Oscar that I'd really love to do it again. You know, where else can you do a show where you can just be an a-hole on stage and just be a mess and throw things around, and it was so much fun. It was just so much fun. So yeah, so I think those are the main ones.
Yeah.
I want to get at least one more crack at Cinderella. It's not a new show, but I'd like to feel like we haven't finished I don't want to do it forever, so I feel like I want to do it maybe one or two more times and then pass it on to somebody else. So I'd like to get one more crack at that. So
Well, we certainly hope you get a shot at it, and it sounds like it's something that's very important to you. So we want to see you. Is it in your mind? I don't think getting it right's the correct way to put it, but is there just some things that you just still want to pinpoint that you want to do a little bit better? Is that what it is?
I don't know if it's better. I just, no, I don't know if it's better. I mean, I think there's some changes we still need to make to the show. I don't want to really go into detail right now, but I think there's some stuff that we still want to tweak, and I feel like I want to be the one to do it. But I also, I think it's good to get a fresh perspective. Rod and Nancy Rich did it for like 4 or 5 years, which is probably the right amount of time, 3, 4. I think doing it for a long period of time is hard to. It's hard to repeat yourself and just keep it topical and fresh. So I think it's one of those shows that, do it for a couple of years. So yeah, there's some, I mean, I don't know if it's get better. I think I just still have some ideas that I want to do and some fun stuff that I want to do. We made a lot of changes over the last 2 years. We added a couple of new numbers. We added a whole new prologue song and some different stuff. So I feel like the bones of the show are pretty good, as much as it's going to be for Cinderella, right? But I still have some ideas I want to try, and then but then I feel it's enough. I think it's something that would be great to pass on to somebody else and get some different, fresh perspectives. So, and I really don't want to do it without my team. I've done the same team for both years. Stage manager, choreographer, music directors. So I think we're kind of a package deal. So I don't think they want to do it forever either. So I think I can get one more out of them, and then maybe we pass it on at that point.
Well, okay then. We certainly hope that comes to fruition in the coming months, and we should hear something about that pretty soon. And also, we have our season out now, our 47th season brochures, and our season is out now. We're going to do a show later on and talk about a little bit more in depth about those shows. But after Almost Maine wraps up this weekend as of this recording, we'll take a break for the summer, and then we'll start up with Never Too Late coming in September. So we'll have more content over the summer. I want to branch out and get some other theaters' perspective. I know we want to talk to Sean about the Wilson Theater and see what they're doing down there. And basically just kind of when our season rolls around, we'll bring it back to the Hut-centric guest. But during the summer, we'll want to see if we can't just, feel out and branch out a little bit. See the possibilities. The podcast is an ever-evolving format, so we want to be mindful of that. Okay, guys, we're gonna wrap.
We can spread out a little bit and maybe expand some other folks' horizons on some things. Bring in some other theaters that people don't know about, maybe around in this area.
I love our little world here at the Hut. But I think we also got to be mindful and not be too insulated and be open to other perspectives and other ideas. It's important. You got to, as you said before, Mike, it's all about striking a balance. Striking a balance in most things we do in life here. All right, gang. Thank you, Mike, for coming out from Raleigh.
Yes, Raleigh, please come on. Thanks so much for having me, Matt. Like I said, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but this place, the Hut, feels home to me. I've only done 3 shows here. It feels like more, and I always enjoy being here, and just love being in this space. So thank you, Mita and Matt, for having me.
Well, thank you, sir, and we hope to see you on stage here in the future, and maybe other possibilities. Who knows what the years will bring. All right, gang. We're gonna sign it off right there, and remember to like, subscribe, and follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and pretty much anywhere that you can listen to a podcast. We're on there. Type in Neuse, Neuse, and usually we are the first one to pop up. We have a corner market on Neuse from the Neuse River, so that kind of helps us out a little bit. So it could not be easier to actually subscribe and listen to the podcast. It's all free. It always will be. Credits for the show. Your host and creator is Matt Gore. That's me. My producer and editor is Mita Toole.
That's me.
Music is by Cody Walker. Please go look up Cody on Cody Walker Music on YouTube, and he's also on Cody Walker Music on Facebook as well. He's local, so and he's got a couple of albums out. Easy listening, John Denver type of guitar voice. That Cody Walker. All right, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you later. Bye bye.